At some point, every creator faces a strange contradiction. The content is improving, the effort is increasing, the consistency is there, and yet the growth still feels unpredictable, almost random, as if success depends on something invisible, something just out of reach. And that's because it often does, not in the obvious layers like editing or thumbnails, but in the deeper layer of perception, how your channel is understood, categorized, and remembered. And this is where the About section quietly becomes one of the most powerful conversion tools you have. Because here's the reality most people miss. Views don't build channels. Decisions do. A viewer can watch your video, even enjoy it, and still leave without subscribing. Why? Because enjoyment alone doesn't create commitment. Commitment comes from clarity, from belief, from the feeling that this channel is worth coming back to. And that belief is often formed not during the video, but right after, when curiosity leads them to your About section. This is where conversion psychology begins to take control, and it operates in layers. The first layer is recognition. The viewer needs to feel like they've found something relevant. The second is reassurance. They need to believe that relevance is consistent. And the third is conviction. They need a reason to act. Your About section, when written strategically, moves them through all three without them even realizing it. One of the strongest triggers in this process is pattern clarity. Humans naturally look for patterns to reduce uncertainty. When your About section clearly outlines what you do, how you do it, and what the viewer can expect repeatedly, it creates a sense of predictability, and predictability builds trust. Because people don't just subscribe for one video, they subscribe for what they believe will happen next. But here's where most creators unknowingly break this pattern. They introduce inconsistency in their messaging. Their videos might focus on one niche, but their About section tries to cover everything. Or worse, it remains so generic that it could apply to anyone. And when there's no clear pattern, there's no clear reason to stay. Another powerful element is perceived value. Not the actual value you provide, but how clearly that value is communicated. You might be creating incredibly useful content, but if your About section fails to express that in a simple, direct way, the viewer won't recognize it. And in the attention economy, unrecognized value is the same as no value at all. Then comes differentiation at a deeper level. Not just what you do, but how you think. Your perspective is your strongest asset, and your About section is where that perspective can quietly stand out. Maybe you break things down more honestly, maybe you simplify complex ideas, maybe you challenge common beliefs. Whatever it is, it should be felt in your words, because people don't just follow information, they follow viewpoints. There's also an element of control here, subtle but powerful. When you write your About section intentionally, you're not just describing your channel. You're shaping how people interpret it. You're guiding their expectations, influencing their perception, and in many ways, pre-framing how they will experience your content. And when that framing is strong, your videos become easier to understand, easier to appreciate, and easier to trust. And then we arrive at one of the most overlooked forces in growth: momentum. Not the viral kind, but the quiet, steady kind that builds over time. When your About section consistently attracts the right audience, your channel starts to stabilize. Your views become more predictable, your engagement more meaningful, and your growth more sustainable. Because you're no longer relying on random clicks. You're building aligned attention. But alignment requires courage. The courage to be specific, to define your space clearly, to accept that not everyone will be your audience. Because the moment you try to appeal to everyone, you lose the very thing that makes you valuable: focus. And without focus, there is no identity. And without identity, there is no growth. Another subtle but critical factor is emotional tone. Not emotion in the dramatic sense, but in the sense of energy. Does your About section feel confident, calm, insightful, urgent? Whatever tone you choose, it should match your content and your audience, because tone shapes perception faster than logic ever can. And finally, there's the closing moment. The point where everything either converts or fades. A strong About section doesn't end abruptly. It lands with intention. It reinforces the value, the clarity, the identity. And then it invites action in a way that feels natural, not forced. Because the best conversions don't feel like decisions, they feel like conclusions. And when you begin to see your About section through this lens, not as a description, but as a conversion system, you start to understand its real power. It's not just supporting your channel, it's amplifying it, aligning it, and quietly increasing every opportunity you have to grow. Because in the end, success on YouTube isn't just about getting attention, it's about keeping it, converting it, and building something that lasts. And the About section, when done right, becomes one of the strongest foundations for that entire process. If you want, I can continue. Part 6, Next Level, Audience Psychology, plus Retention Loops, plus Algorithm Trust Building Secrets, in the same cinematic style.